Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Auto Central show powered by Auto Trader and South Africa's leading automotive podcast, brought to you by Auto Trader and me, George Mienie, and my co-host here, Wandile Sishi.
Another week. We're back again.
We're back again. Well, we're sitting in a different position now because we have two awesome guests with us. And the first guest is Ben Pullen. Did I say that right, Ben?
You did. Hey, George.
Okay.
How are you doing?
Hey, good, and you? Good. It's good to have you on the show. So we've dedicated the show today to smarter mobility, which has been going on the entire week. And we've got another awesome guest, which is joining us via Zoom. And her name is Kriya Gangia. Did I say that right?
On point. I'm very proud of you, George.
Lovely, 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 lovely. Really good to have you guys on the show. And we're going to be talking everything smarter mobility this week, and mainly EVs. And the Smarter Mobility Conference, which is Africa's premier electric vehicle conference, which features motoring industry experts, governments, entrepreneurs, all surrounding the EV space. Some really incredible things have come out of this year's conference. And we're joined by these two wonderful people to tell us all about it. So let's start with you, Ben, CEO of Generation.e. How do you find yourself here in South Africa with, what we call a Pommy accent? And tell us a little bit about the history of Generation.e.
Yeah, it's a long story. So I'll start right at the beginning. So I think just with electric vehicles, I really saw back in 2015 that there was this thing happening. And I think probably like most people, I was engaged with electric vehicles firstly through the idea of Tesla.
Yeah.
But back in 2014-15, people really they weren't really thinking about Tesla. It was just the ones that knew. It wasn't a mass market thing. Tesla wasn't the brand that it is today.
Yeah, definitely.
And I just thought, people need to know about this. They need the awareness needs to be brought around the power of electric vehicles and what's about to come. So we launched an electric vehicle road trip in Europe, and we used Tesla, and we went around the whole of Europe in electric vehicles, and it just picked up momentum. It wasn't actually supposed to be a business, but the traction and the interest we were getting from government and business just indicated that this could actually be something I spend time on and turn into a business. I was working in Dubai at the time, working in the solar industry, and I could just see the trend even in somewhere like the UAE, the Middle East, the region of a lot of the world's oil. And I thought, if we could launch the electric vehicle road trip in the Middle East, that's saying something. So that was when I launched the business as a proper business. And we had a few amazing partners that joined. It was actually Renault that was one of the big manufacturers that joined back then. And a guy called Francis Barham, who's based in South Africa, joined us on that electric vehicle road trip. I believe he had an amazing time. And a few months later, he sent me an email and said, Ben, that was incredible. I think this could really work in Africa, in South Africa. Have you ever considered it? And actually, we did have someone else that wanted to bring the event to South Africa a few months before. So that surprisingly, South Africa's been the one country that's shown a lot of interest in what we're doing. So this all sort of added up, and I thought that does sound interesting. So let's do some research. And the more that we did the research into South Africa and the idea of running the event, we could just see that there's a lot of appetite.
Was that so when you started the business? Was this before Europe started putting in those deadlines? Because I think the conference has given a lot of awareness to EVs, and I think that's really important considering the direction that we're moving in. If we had waited any longer, who knows where we were going to be. So was that taken in consideration, or was it just
It was before the deadlines, yeah.
Wow.
So
What year was that?
So 2014-15 was when we started the first electric vehicle road trips, and there was some momentum, but I mean, even the government didn't believe in it. Most governments, Norway was probably
and China
getting underway, and China probably a bit back then, but it was still a very, very niche. It's niche now, but it was super niche back then.
Yeah.
But I had that wow factor, and I mentioned that yesterday at the conference with George, and I've mentioned it in the report. The EV car buyer survey, that when you just get in an electric vehicle and you feel the power, you feel the control and the performance, you suddenly realize this is a game changer.
Definitely. Well, let's get on to the lady in the room, Kriya. And Kriya is, where are you, Kriya?
I'm currently at home in Pretoria.
Okay.
I was busy 3 days with the guys at the conference. So today I'm at home back in Pretoria, and I didn't have to take a Gau train to get anywhere.
Well, just out of interest, Kriya, you have a long-time fan on the show. And, I don't know if Wandile wanted me to say that. But
I did it. And now it's awkward. Now she knows my secret.
He's got to make it awkward. It is George.
So you have something in common with Wandile, and that is Formula One.
Yeah. I've been watching you for like, a while now. And it's so weird that I get to speak to you, because I used to watch you on TV and be like, oh my God, one day I hope to like just have a conversation with her about cars, and now it's happened. So.
Wow. So there we go. Bucket list tick.
One thing I will say is, don't ever start a conversation with a girl with, I used to watch you for a while.
Yes. Wandile. Don't do that. Well, Kriya, how do you find yourself here involved with Generation.e Ben and, electric vehicles?
Well, I've always had a bit of a history when it comes to motor vehicles, and been involved, like you said, with Formula One, with the motor championships in South Africa. I've always had an interest in it. And I actually got invited to go on the first South African electric vehicle road trip. I joined the guys down in Cape Town, and I just fell in love with the concept. It's always been an interest of mine, but for now, it's become a reality. And after spending the week with the guys and kind of getting to know everyone, I got the call from Julie and Ben to host this year's conference, and I couldn't have been more excited.
That's amazing. All right. So, we're going to get into some of the meat of this, but just to kind of set the scene of the history of EVs in South Africa, electric vehicles have been in the country for a little while now, but ultimately not yet mass produced. EVs have really only been here for about, I think, 10 years or so. I think it's a little known fact. And there are only 4 available production vehicles, and that's the Porsche Taycan, the Jaguar I-Pace, Mini SE, and the BMW i3. And I've driven 50% of those. So the Nissan Leaf I haven't driven, but we can see the Nissan Leaf seems to be disappearing off showroom floors. They're no longer available in the new models. And in 2019, there are only 1,100 EVs sold in South Africa. So Ben, with mass-produced EVs being in the country since about 2010, and this year's conference, do you think that the country from an infrastructure standpoint is ready for a proposed mass adoption? Because we saw what the study said, but is the country ready for it?
It's an interesting question because obviously we shared some insights at the summit, and I've been thinking about that point again around infrastructure, and there's actually a caveat to the infrastructure, I would say. So in a similar way to a lot of other countries that have moved ahead and they have the infrastructure installed, the infrastructure is there in many ways, but the question mark has to be around the quality of the infrastructure and basically the power output. Yeah. And what we experienced on the electric vehicle road trip is that you get to the station thinking it's going to be 50 kilowatts of output or more, and actually it's less. And that is a huge challenge. And I hate to bring the big negative to the room.
It's the elephant.
But that's the thing. I mean, the infrastructure is there, great, but the power supply, I'm sure it's moved on in the last 12 months. I'm sure the guys that have built those charging stations have managed to increase the power supply, but it is hard because when you're building fast charging stations, for longer distance journeys, you need a lot of power. It's 50 kilowatt plus of output. That's a lot of power. I mean, 50 kilowatt battery would provide your house with power for maybe 4 to 5 days.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of power, but Kriya, do we need fast chargers initially to get mass adoption? And you're living in South Africa yourself, being involved with the Smarter Mobility and Generation.e, do we need it, or is it just a lifestyle change?
Look, it is probably a lifestyle change, but then in a whole, you have to say that adopting EVs is a lifestyle change. I think a lot of South Africans, and you pick this up from your Auto Trader survey, a lot of South Africans are under the preconception that I can fast charge my vehicle in 30 minutes. And that's unfortunately not really a reality at the moment, but it is something that South Africans want. So it's either a a way that we need to kind of accept that this is the situation that we're in, just how we accepted load shedding, which has never been heard of anywhere else in the world. We need to accept that you can't just charge your car in 30 minutes. You need to leave it overnight, or you need to give it an hour or 2 hours, go and do your shopping whilst it charges in a mall, that sort of thing. So it needs to be kind of hand in hand. It needs to be these are our expectations, but this is what the country can give us at the moment.
Yeah, so I mean, I echo those sentiments. Hey, Wendy. Let's talk a little bit about the drop dead date. You alluded to them a little bit earlier, and our aging fleet.
Yeah. So something that was spoken about quite extensively at the conference was the fact that Europe has set these deadlines, and the fact that South Africa relies on exporting a lot of the vehicles, which are ICE vehicles, overseas. Once these deadlines hit, we on a kind of a serious predicament, because that's a lot of income, a lot of GDP that gets eradicated.
Well, 7%, right?
Yeah, about 7%. So something that was spoken about greatly was the fact that if we don't start manufacturing within South Africa, we're going to lose all that business and ultimately an entire industry where we're just taking these old vehicles from Europe, which nobody really wants, right? Nobody wants to kind of be the dumping site. So the question to that is, do you think we're ready? Do you think the government is ready to start putting in these, these laws to start allowing for these OEMs to start building in South Africa?
Well, this is exactly the point around electric vehicles, is that in many places around the world over the last few years, they may not have been ready today. But if we based all of our decisions on today, how's Auto Trader going to, build the business in the next few years? If you just thought about what's happening today, a podcast, you got to look ahead.
Yeah.
And the trend is so clear, the writing's on the wall, and there's going to be this point where it sort of drop off the cliff. And if you haven't prepared and got your parachute ready, it's going to be a heavy drop.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sleepwalking if you don't plan.
Well, that's the nice thing, right? We do have a deadline. It's not like it's like tomorrow.
I mean, I've got an analogy. I mean, Ben knows I use the horse analogy. I've got another one, and it is if you look in the rearview mirror too much, you're going to have a head-on collision.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you're referring to. You can't look in the rearview mirror too much because you're going to hit something. So we've got to look to the future. And my sense is that, given the survey results, and let's get into that for a second. Given the survey results, consumers want these things. 68% of consumers said that they want to own an EV. I mean, have you seen those kinds of results anywhere else in your surveys?
No, I don't think we have. I was pleasantly surprised when I saw the results of the survey. Were you guys surprised? Did you think there would be such an appetite
100%.
for electric vehicles?
We were very surprised. Yeah. As a South African Kriya, were you surprised at consumers' appetite?
No. So, and the reason why I say no is because what I've noticed with South Africans over the years is we've started realizing that there's a massive change we need to do in our behaviors just to become more environmentally friendly. And you can see it with areas like Cape Town is a massive
that's true.
kind of advocate for green lifestyles and green livings. And I think we're starting to see that change kind of go through everyone in South Africa. And it's because we're a very environmental country. If you think about it, our biggest form of income in the country is tourism, to come see our wildlife. We need to start preserving these areas. And we're very conscious of what our carbon footprints are. So to see South Africans want to adopt it was definitely not a surprise for me. But what is surprising to South Africans is how much it's going to cost them to become greener.
Yeah, I think that's the whole elephant in the room that I kind of came out of your 3 days with. Is the elephant in the room is really cost. It's not cost of ownership in running the EV. It's really the cost of the infrastructure and the cost of the EV itself that has to come down, and that was a constant theme that seemed to have come out. But let's talk about what Ben alluded to earlier on, and that's and Kriya also alluded to this concept that no one else in the world knows about, and it's load shedding. The CSIR did a study in Tshwane that showed that overnight EV recharging would have absolutely zero effect on our electricity grid. So around the fireplace, when I talk to my friends and we talk about EVs, I'm the only I mean, I think I must, the 4 or 5 close friends that I've got, I think all of them are petrol heads. I'm the only person that likes EVs. And
Can I ask a question on that before you continue?
Sure.
How many of them have driven an EV?
None. Good question.
Yeah.
Good
Case
question.
in point.
Case in point. Yeah. Good point. And Twani did the study that proved that there is no effect on the electricity grid overnight. So do we really have a problem? And are people citing load shedding just because it's politically the talking point?
I think around the world, a lot of people have said you'll never be able to add electric vehicles to the grid because the grid just won't cope, and that's been proven to be a load of rubbish. What it has done is it has led to upgrades in the grid, which I think is good for any country, because a lot of electricity grids, including South Africa, were built like 100 years ago, if not more, and many of them do need to be upgraded. And renewable energy has been driving that upgrade, because you've had to think about intermittent renewable energy coming on, and I think electric vehicles will drive more investment into the grid as well. So I think there's an indirect investment that we can see. And what was the second point to that?
So in the study, the overnight charging that Twani did the study on proved that there's no load on the grid overnight. But the question is, so then is load shedding a problem? And I suppose from your perspective, you're unfamiliar with load shedding because you're English.
I did get a good taste of it last year when I lived here. Yeah.
Oh, you lived here?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
I was in Centurion, so I had a good experience of. Either waking up with no electricity or having evenings with candles, and it was cozy, but obviously it meant that you couldn't work, and it did disrupt work a bit. But I think with load shedding, no, I would say 95% of the time you would have no issues. I think it's more of a psychological thing, because you have an electric car that needs electricity, and if there isn't electricity, how can you charge your car? But I think it's very rare that your car would ever hit 0% electricity. You wouldn't wake up like, oh no, I have 0%. You would wake up and be like, oh, I only have 95%. But anyway, I'm only driving down the road to the office. And it's not like during load shedding, suddenly the whole of Gauteng is blackout. You could, I'm sure there'll be petrol stations that have charging stations. There'll be certain malls that have backup generators and so on. So you know what? It may be a slight inconvenience, and you could just go down the road and charge somewhere else. But it's not like you're going to be stuck and you have to phone an Uber or whatever else. It's not like that. So it's definitely a psychological barrier. I don't think it's a real barrier. And I guess what would be really interesting is if any electric vehicle owners are listening, if you could just
echo that.
Tweet to Auto Trader. Is this a problem for you? Have you woken up? Has it disrupted your personal life or work life?
Just 2 things to add to that. So you spoke about, George asked the question about the grid. So something that I have seen is a lot of EV companies actually give power to the grid. So they have solar energy connected to it, and if there's anything extra, it actually powers the grid as well. So that's a plus. And then on that note, do you think that, or have you seen rather, that people who buy EVs also go solar? Is that like a correlation that you've made? Because I know in America it happens quite a bit.
Great point. So firstly, the vehicle to grid technology that you mentioned, the bidirectional flow of electricity, that is the final piece of the puzzle. If this can really happen, and in many places it's showing that it can. Nezan Leaf has been a big leader on vehicle to grid. This is the final piece of the puzzle, meaning that either your house potentially or where you live is completely off the grid, so you are relying on batteries and perhaps your car. But on a bigger picture scale, if you had sort of 1,000, 10,000, 500,000 electric cars, suddenly the car becomes a storage for the grid, and it actually assists the grid. And that's what the National Grid has said in the UK, that electric vehicles will assist the grid. They're not going to be adding more pressure, because they can act as huge battery storage units and give and take power as and when you need. And you would eradicate load shedding, because load shedding is basically there's too much demand at a point when there's not enough supply. Battery storage allows you to flatten that peak.
Well, in our case, not enough coal.
Yeah.
Hey, Kriya, actually, something that actually came out of the study was the fact that youth are looking to buy in like 5 years, but all the generations are looking a little bit sooner than that. Do you have opinion on that? Do you think there's a reason why the younger you are, the more years you're waiting to pick up an EV?
Because you can't afford it at this moment in time.
There we go. Vulgar mechanics of cash.
Yeah.
We actually did this exercise. Ben and I did this exercise during the conference because I'm very much so in the stage where I'm looking to buy an EV. And the ones that are on the market, when it comes to things like, let's take a very youth-focused car, the Mini Cooper. For a Mini Cooper 3-door, just the normal Mini Cooper, you're looking at about just over 400,000 Rand, brand new off the shelf. And for the electric vehicle, you're looking at 640,000 Rand. Yeah. So as a youth already, I'm forking out a lot of money to get a Mini Cooper. But if I want an electric vehicle, I have to push myself into a range where me, as a young professional who's over the age of 30, I won't tell you exactly how old, can't afford a Mini Cooper electric vehicle because it's just completely and utterly out of my budget.
Well, I mean, that's I suppose one of the things that's really reared its head over the last couple of days, and it's probably been there all the time, Kriya, and that is the import taxes on these EVs in South Africa. 25% as a base number on an EV, and 18% on an ICE vehicle, and then you've got ad valorem tax, you've got VAT, and all those things, and countries like Norway have dodged that by bringing the import taxes down and the manufacturing taxes down, and pushed carbon emission taxes up. So Ben, I mean, do you think government is going to walk down this road? We heard from the Minister of Transport, I think it was on Tuesday morning. Do you get a sense that that this plan is going to be put on wheels? And
I believe so. I don't know when, but I believe so. South Africa has signed up for certain carbon emission reduction targets with the Paris Agreement. In order to raise investment or to bring money into a country like South Africa, which is very much one of the top 20 GDP countries, I think, in the world, you need to show credentials around reducing carbon emissions, and reducing air pollution, which is bad for public health. So I believe it will happen. And just on the Norway point, we had Christina Boo present at our London conference in 2017, and we were really looking forward to hearing what's Norway done. How have they done this? It just sounds so incredible.
Sounds like utopia.
Yeah, the Norway story, and it was just so simple. It was like we increased tax on the bad stuff, we reduced tax on the good stuff.
Problem solved.
I was like, wow, that's how you did it. And so, when we talk about policies and tax and incentives, and it all sounds so complex, but actually, it is as simple as that. Firstly, electric vehicles in South Africa should be at least the same import duty tax as internal combustion engines. But let's get it down to zero for a few years.
Yeah. I mean, I say zero. I know NAMSA is working on a plan to lobby to government to get it down to zero. I mean, my sense, Ben and Kriya and Wandile, is that these cars need to be cheaper than ICE vehicles to stimulate real demand. Bringing it down to the same price is I think noble, but it's not enough. I don't think it's
realistic though, George. In your opinion, do you think that's possible?
So let's take Kriya's example: 642,000 Rand Mini. What is that? Probably 180,000 Rand you would get off that car if the taxes were at zero. So that brings it down to what? Testing my maths here. Under 500,000 Rand. 500 and yeah.
And actually, the people say that if an EV was cheaper than 500,000, there'd be more.
They'd buy it. Would you go for an EV under 500,000, Kriya?
Hells yes.
Exactly.
I would, definitely.
And Elon Musk has said he wants to bring an EV to market for $25,000. Now, if you just do the maths on the $25,000, it's zero import tax, and given the study. If you go to reports.autotrader.co.za and you can download what I'm talking about, consumers trust Tesla as an EV manufacturer over and above many other brands, even in South Africa, while Tesla is not even here yet. So I mean, I think Ben, I agree with you, at least the same, but I would say more.
Absolutely. And they say by 2024, electric vehicles will be at price parity with internal combustions anyway. So, we could wait until 2024, but that would just be so sad, because who loses out here? Well, it's the consumers, it's the businesses, and it's actually government, because government, they have so many vehicles anyway that they operate. G Fleet, for example, I think they have over 10,000 vehicles that they buy and then lease to government entities. So there's a huge cost that the government, which essentially is a taxpayer, is just paying on inefficient cars and fuel that essentially is an imported good, where that money goes to other parts of the world. So I think it needs to happen now, even if it's just for a few years. It's not going to dent anyone's purse. It's not going to, 1 million electric vehicles won't be sold next year if that happens. I mean, if that happened, that would be incredible. We definitely celebrate, but it's going to be a gradual increase. It will be a few thousand, then maybe a few tens of thousand, but it's not going to affect things. So let's get on with it.
Yeah, and if you want to import an EV yourself, even a second-hand EV, you're not allowed to in South Africa and most countries, and understand that, and it's the right thing to do, because most cars are built for the environment of a country, and so we're even further restricted from adopting EVs in South Africa. So we need to get these taxes down.
Love to add on to also, because we talk about the cars in South Africa. So Mienie is obviously here, and then the BMW, but there are almost 240 models available now around the world. Many of them would come in underneath 500,000 rand anyway.
Yep.
So then when if you were then to reduce the import duty further, you're suddenly looking at electric vehicles that are becoming affordable for a wider segment of the market.
Yeah.
And then if we
68% of the consumers, as we saw.
Exactly. And then if we take the total cost of ownership in, so ABSA put forward the analysis, which is basically, you've got your sticker price, okay. Everyone looks at the sticker price, but we need to look at all of the costs that go into running the car, and then the resale value. And so what ABSA found is, even today with the current vehicles available, there's a 3% saving on the total cost of ownership versus a petrol car. I forget what car they were using. Maybe Kriya, you remember, as a comparison. I definitely need to watch back on the conference.
I think they were using they weren't using a specific car. They were just using a 500,000 rand value. They were just used. That's probably why you didn't see the car, because it wasn't there. But I watched that piece at your conference, and I think ABSA was being slightly pessimistic. I think the numbers are better than that, to be honest.
A lot of establishments normally are quite pessimistic. I don't know if it's because they're just trying to be conservative, or but a few, Bloomberg New Energy Finance, for example, they're always quite on the point with forecasting what's going to happen. So they're good guys to look at when you're looking at sort of what's the global forecast for electric vehicles, what's really happening on the ground.
I've got a funny story to tell. I had range anxiety yesterday on the way to the conference. So I drive a Land Rover, and to the dismay of some of my Toyota and Jeep driving friends. But I left my house, and if you ask Wandile or any of the team, you'll know that in my car is my opportunity to make phone calls. So I'm on the phone. I leave my house, and I see on my it's a diesel Land Rover. Don't shoot me, Kriya. I see on the range it says 14 kilometers to go on what was left in the tank. So I thought, okay, I'll leave my house. I'll stop at the petrol filling station, and I'll fill the car, and then I'll get to Sandton. Very fine. I'm on the phone. I forget to stop at the filling station. I climb on the motorway.
Oh, jeez.
I got to Rivonia Road, and when I got to Buccleuch, I realized that I hadn't stopped, and I got to Rivonia Road, and my clock said 1 kilometer left. I thought, well, if this is real range anxiety, I'm feeling it. I managed to get to the filling station as the thing turned zero, but I probably could go another couple of 100 meters. But there was a scary experience. Talking about range anxiety, Kriya, you've driven electric cars, right?
I have, yes. I've been lucky enough to drive a few of them.
And kind of try and unpack for people listening to this whether range anxiety is a real thing, or is it just a fear that is conceptual?
Well, first I have to kind of go with your story that you just told. That is a standard operating procedure in my life. My boyfriend actually has a jerry can at home for me because I end up using it on a regular and he has to come and save me.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm very, very bad when it comes to that sort of thing. But I can definitely say that having driven EVs, obviously, yes, you do have a point where you do get to, okay, cool, now I really have to recharge my vehicle, and I'm getting to that point. But there's a lot of things that the cars have built in as well. So when we were driving the Jag, and Ben, you can help me out with the exact correct wording here. The Jag actually has, I think it's called regenerative braking, where it actually charges whilst you're driving the vehicle. So you're never going to be really left in a spot where you're completely out of power and like pop, like you would be if you were out of petrol.
And your boyfriend has to bring you a battery. Or
I can see him being very upset about that as well. But it's something that users don't really know of. Users think it's like my cell phone. Cool, I've got 100% battery. When I get down to 0%, it's going to turn off and it's not going to start again. And I have to plug it in to charge it. It's the same misconceptions and myths that a lot of people have with a number of elements with EVs. Did I use the right word? It is regenerative charging, right?
Nice work. But I'd love to give some perspective as well to the range anxiety of petrol and battery electric vehicles. So I drove an electric vehicle for about 6 months between 2019 and 2020. One of our partners gave me one to use, a very nice Chevrolet Bolt electric vehicle. And it was great because I'd get home every night and I'd plug it in. There was a charging station, not directly where I was, but it was like a 1 or 2 minute walk. So I'd charge every evening. I'd wake up with a full tank every morning.
Yeah.
And then when I went back to driving a petrol car, which is just a lease vehicle, it is a pain because our mindset currently is you drive a petrol or diesel car and you wait until you get to close to red or to red, because you can't sort of, I'm 80% full, I'll top up. Can you imagine just topping up every sort of couple of days just because you're 80%? So we have this mindset to wait, how far can I push it before I need to fill up? Because it's a pain. It is a pain. And quite often you're in that moment where you're like, shit, I've almost run out of fuel. Where's the nearest petrol station? Can you please, if my girlfriend's in a car, please can you check the map? Where can we find a petrol station? And so you experience that on a weekly basis, right? But in an electric vehicle, you never experience it unless you are doing a long journey. Because if we're driving to Cape Town on an electric car, you're at this point where actually there's still not a range anxiety issue. Yeah. Because you just plan where the charging stations are and you go and charge. So yeah, I would say I experience more range anxiety in a petrol vehicle.
But there's like really interesting technology that's coming to kind of address that. I've seen electric bikes, for instance, where you just replace the battery, and I've seen wireless, like you just drive over the thing and it starts charging your car. Yeah. So I mean, I don't think range anxiety is going to be an issue for very long. I think it's going to be just kind of, it's the early stages. But 2024, some of those things are going to be kind of sorted out already.
Good point.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Well, we're
interesting on that is that it was actually a question that came up in the conference from one of the guys. Would we get to a point where we're going to start doing battery swaps for vehicles? Yeah. And the problem is that it's a little bit more complicated because a lot of the tech for the EVs actually live within the batteries. So unless you're battery swapping within like a Jag or a Nissan or a Mienie, it gets a little bit complicated. So that's the one problem. And the second problem is that even if you are doing induction charging, it still takes a little bit of time. But I agree with you, we will get there.
We will definitely get there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have time for. We could probably sit and talk about this all day long.
Could.
Exactly. So, very finally, Kriya, any final thoughts? Anything you want to leave us with before we close off the show?
I'm going to go back to one of your points where you said that with your 5 close friends that are all petrol heads and you're the only one thinking of driving an EV, is go out and test drive an EV. Just try it. Just like take your mind out of the space where you're like, oh, electricity is going to be a problem, charging is going to be, just take your mind out of that space and experience the vehicle. It'll change your mind when it comes to EVs.
Echoed that so well. Ben, any final thoughts?
100% on that, Kriya. So we're now in a state of paradigm shifts. Now remember when you didn't have a smartphone? It was a Nokia 3310.
Oh, remember those.
The joy you got from it was playing Snake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine you were still stuck on a 3310, yet everyone else around you had a smartphone, an iPhone 12. You know, that is the difference here in my view. We're going from an old-fashioned Nokia 3310 to a smartphone. That's one paradigm. Then just going back to your question on the renewable energy. So when people go electric, do they go for renewable energy? Well, there's a show on Apple TV right now. I don't know if you've been watching it. It's called Long Way Up. It's Ewan McGregor and Charlie, what's his name? Charlie Borman, both motorcycle fanatics. They did 2 shows in the last 20 years going around the world on petrol bikes.
Yes.
And this show, they managed to pull together 2 Harley Davidson electric bikes.
Yeah.
And 2 Rivian electric cars. These big, you know.
Yeah, the Buckies.
Yeah, and George would like this one, I think. And anyway, I watched the show 2 weeks ago and I tweeted a quote from what Ewan said, which was basically, it was just around the idea that one of the key benefits of electric vehicles is that they open up a person's mind to a cleaner and more efficient energy, and it makes them more conscious of emissions in the environment. And I can say that that's definitely happening to all of the people that we meet and speak to that have either test driven an electric vehicle or own one. So that tweet is on my Twitter. It's Ben Pullen Energy. I'm going to retweet it, tagging Auto Trader, because it's been the most popular tweet I've ever done. I mean, 84 likes. I don't know if that's good or not, but 23 retweets and a whole load of comments. It just went pretty viral because I think so many people are resonating with that message. Yeah. Once you go electric, you're suddenly thinking about kilowatt hours, and then you're thinking about where do they come from. Then you realize that they can actually come from solar and wind, and then there's battery storage and all this other stuff. So I think this is the other huge paradigm shift. One is we're going from a 3310 to an Apple 12, iPhone 12. And the other is that people are just becoming so more aware of what they're actually fueling their vehicle with.
That is such wise words. So where can we find you, Kriya? What is your social media handle?
I'm super easy. It's Kriya G on all social media platforms. So you can hook up with me on any of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the works.
All right, that's Kriya, right?
That's
Kriya
correct.
G. G at the end. There we go. If you want to go and follow Kriya, go and do that. And then Ben, you said it was?
It's Ben Pullen Energy.
Ben Pullen Energy. So that's BEN, PULLEN, and the word energy. Go and check out Ben's tweets. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for. Final thoughts, Wandile?
Yeah, no, the future's interesting. The future's looking really, really interesting, and I think thank you for all the work that you guys are doing at Smart Mobility. I think it's really important. I don't want to sound like a tree hugger. I love F1 cars. I love speed. I love the sound of an engine. But this is the necessary step that we need to take. And yeah, I can't wait to see it happen.
Definitely. We're all tree huggers deep down, but we want to look cool doing it. So we need a nice flashy car and nice looking solar panels and a nice iPhone 12.
Exactly. Kriya.
And I say, as an F1 person, you should be okay with this because we're already in the hybrid era with F1.
Yeah, almost there.
There we go.
They're faster and better.
And Formula E is coming to SA.
Yes, that's very true. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's been Auto Central, another week powered by Auto Trader, and I'm George Mienie, joined by our co-host, Wandile Sishi, Kriya Gangia, and Ben Pullen from Generation.e. See you next time.